Right, we're rolling. On this podcast, we'll be talking about different areas of business and all things marketing. My name is Dave Doyle.
And I'm Dave Alton. This is Social Antics, another marketing podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to Social Antics, another marketing podcast. You're joined by myself, Dave Doyle, and my co-host, Dave Alton. Christmas week, Dave?
Yeah, it's November and we're talking about fucking Christmas, but that's the way of the world now,
Christmas
isn't it?
episode.
Now, the one thing, to be fair, the one thing that I would say is that, like, given that everything is bleak and drab and dreary at the moment, walking around a couple of, like, cities, it's nice to see the bit of the Christmas kind of atmosphere starting to break through a small
We
bit.
talked about last week, definitely Christmas come early, kind of definitely this year.
Oh yeah, totally. Like, I mean, people need a bit of spark of joy now at this point. Like, and there's some, I don't want to use the term green shoots because I'm not a bloody politician, but I mean, there's some signs that there is people starting to spend a bit, like I saw there during the week, even though EasyJet posted their first ever loss. I think it was 1.3 billion in the history of the 25-year history of the company. In the last week, sales are up 50%. So as soon as the vaccine announcement came that Pfizer were going to start churning stuff out, we're out of here basically. Yeah, get me out of this country. Like, so. No, there's people starting to pick up a bit.
But I saw that the article that you're referring to there about EasyJet, like they're making news. It's not something that can't be expected, I suppose. Like, you know, all the travel companies and all the airline companies are going to be down this year.
Fucked. Yeah, they're fucked.
They really are, like, you know.
The question it'll be like, and I think we mentioned this a few weeks ago, is that there's a couple of companies there, your Ryanair's for example, who have very, very strong balance sheets. And with a lot of the distress that a lot of the smaller airlines are going to be in, will there be a lot of consolidation within that industry whereby Ryanair will basically buy up tangible assets, planes and so on and so forth from all these other industries? So, I mean, a bit of consolidation there possibly, but it's going to be into anything in the hospitality, retail, travel, tourism, any of those sectors who are vastly disrupted by COVID. The next kind of 2 months, 3 months are really going to say a lot, like, do you know what I mean? Because, like, even retailers now, for example, they're coming into a Christmas period and the signs are that they'll kind of open for a bit of December and then they'll really open for after, you know what I mean?
The economy can't afford not to be open, like, you know, even if cases are still up there and stuff, they probably will open for a 2-week break and go back into lockdown. You'd
imagine so, like, I mean, in reality, there's a lot of businesses you would imagine just cannot survive without Christmas.
Would you look at any hospitality business, even retail, whatever it is, they got hit by the first lockdown, Paddy's weekend. That Paddy's weekend, your bank holiday weekends or whatever, they're normal. But Paddy's weekend, Christmas, big money makers. And if businesses don't have those, there's not going to be not a lot of business going to come out of it next year.
No, I'd agree with that, yeah. So look, let's see how things go. I mean, the signals are pretty good from NEFIT, which for our UK listeners is the kind of health advisory group to the government in relation to all COVID-19 matters. So no, let's see. It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be interesting. So anyway, enough of the bleak stuff. Onto the happy, fun, festive joy.
Full episode of Christmas, fucking Christmas cheer.
Christmas in November.
Listeners of Social Antics, yeah, exactly.
So look, I suppose Christmas, it's definitely probably one of the best time of the years for marketers. I swear to
God, I thought you were going to finish that. I said it was the most wonderful time of the year. I thought, oh fuck.
It came into my head, but I was trying to, it kind of took over everything I was thinking about. I was trying to think of something else quickly. No, for marketers, it's definitely, you know, something to look forward to each year because you can have a bit of fun, but it's probably one of the biggest time of the years in terms of advertising, selling, sales, whatever it is. So there's kind of a lot of stress around here for businesses as well to be ready. I suppose a lot of them will leave it to kind of last minute.
Oh, well, it's for, like, I mean, for the bigger businesses, like, I mean, okay, you say you can have a bit of fun around it and it's one of the few times, but, like, every year there is the battle of the Christmas ad and sales revenue. Like, I mean, even though all businesses will have their most sales around Christmas time, for marketers in the likes of your Waitrose, your John Lewis, any of the big retailers, this is the time when, as a marketer, you make it or break it, like, basically. Do you know what I mean? You either do a really, really good job around the Christmas period or you're getting sacked in January, February. Like, so even though a lot of creativity comes out around this time of year, ultimately, if marketers don't do the business, they're in big trouble afterwards. Like, and you can even see with some of the ads, like you showed me one there from TK Maxx just before we came on the air, and just terrible nonsense altogether. Like,
so we're going to go through a few now for this episode, but when you see the problem is now is social media has kind of not really helped the things for marketers, but you will see an ad and straight away it's in competition with the other ads, whereas before when you didn't have social media or online platforms, basically you were just whatever TV channel you watched, whatever ad was on that channel, maybe paying for that specific platform or whatever, whereas now they're all being pitched against each other, so there's as you said, there's a lot more competition on the market.
Yeah, like, I mean, before you used to pay for eyeballs. We'll pay X amount of million to have this showed after X Factor, whatever the story is. Now the only way that you find the Christmas ads is either one, if you're one of the 1% of the population who still watches ads on the television, or if the ad finds you because your buddy shared it or someone commented on it, it appeared on your feed. And again, that's a battle for organic content. I think what you'll find is that a lot of these brands are still, there's almost an element of shame paying for the content to be distributed. They want people to actually find the ad via the kind of reality that it generates online. So no, it's going to be, look, it's always an interesting time of year. I think it's fascinating the way that in many ways marketers haven't really evolved. Like, I mean, the Christmas ad battle was going on before social media, and the ads kind of really haven't changed that much, I suppose, in a social media world. But as you say, they've become way more competitive, yeah.
And I think you said they haven't really changed that much. You can see the formula that works, and you can see some of them will try to test that formula and try and change and adapt it, and it'll go very, very well, and they'll have the best ad of the year or whatever, or it's going to go horribly wrong. And we've seen, I've definitely seen one or two businesses this year that, taking that formula and taking what makes a good Christmas advert and then tying in with what I should have thought a lot of ads this year should have been around that family feeling, at home. Some of them went in using that formula but totally botched it, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I mean, they do, but I think there has to be a balance here as well, in terms of if they all do that, then it's completely ineffective. So there's narrative, but as well as that too, I think there has to be I think around there's almost kind of a cult following, if you like, around the Christmas ads and pitting them against each other. But almost now, because people are viewing it as a battle of the ads, the brand almost doesn't matter. Like before, if you saw a John Lewis ad, the intention of that ad was that you would then go to John Lewis and you would spend your money in John Lewis. Whereas now I feel, because people are so, like, they are pitched as the battle of the ads, that people just view them as ads and they're almost not influenced by them, because it's just pieces of content. It's not leading
to physical sales almost. Yeah. It'll lead to a bigger brand awareness or whatever at the time, due to the name being shared around the place, but it's not going to lead to Mary walking into the shop kind of an attitude.
And even if it is, like, I mean, I remember back to the one of the best campaigns, we can talk about it a bit more later on, but like, I mean, the John Lewis Bear and Hair ad a number of years ago, and one of the critical features of that ad is that, okay, they had the bear and the hair, and that was out on social media, TV and all the rest of it, and everything that was tied into it, but in every single John Lewis store they created basically a kind of a scene, if you like, or a set of bear and hair. And then of course, what were people doing? They were going in, taking selfies with bear, taking selfies with hair, and then that organic traction of hashtag bear and hair was spreading everywhere. So what that created was, it wasn't only increasing the visibility of the John Lewis brand online, but it was creating a destination for consumers to actually go into the store, and inevitably if you were in the store you would end up buying something. That's now obviously a lot different this year, because I think there's going to be a lot more people convenience shopping. People aren't going to queue for hours on end outside a Brown Thomas or outside a John Lewis because they want to go there in the freezing cold. They're just not going to do that. In shopping centres now it's probably a bit different, but people are going to convenience shop. When's early for me to get in somewhere? What's closer to me? What offers click and collect? So I think now more so than ever, regardless of choice, offering, pricing and all the rest of it, I think brands are going to be acutely aware of their importance of their overall omni-channel communications and convenience for the consumer.
So you mentioned John Lewis there, right? John Lewis is probably the top, the probably most awaited for anyway, where we are
going
based
back years, yeah.
Definitely the most awaited for Christmas ad every year, and it's kind of that thing, you see a couple of things, whether it's tradition for your family or just, cultural and society and all that, you kind of know it's definitely Christmas when John Lewis has released the advert. Very much like the Coca-Cola ad or the Kellogg's ad coming on, or hearing Fairy Tale New York on the radio, all these kind of things. So John Lewis is up there with it's Christmas when you see the John Lewis advert.
Historically, I think, yeah, but recently I'm not so sure.
Why is that?
I just said recently, I mean, we can talk about this year's ad, and I didn't think it was as bad as people made out, but over the last 3 or 4 years, I think there's been an overwhelming feeling of people almost being disappointed by the John Lewis ad because they had such a high standard, and every year people were waiting. I think the last few years, again, there's been a sense of it was alright, wasn't what I expected. Do you know what I mean? It hasn't been as knockout as it would have been in the earlier days.
But do you think that's maybe because almost people are not, I don't know, they're immune to it maybe more so, like, you know, it's very, very hard to please nowadays.
Oh no, like, I mean, like you said, the formula of the Christmas ad is very much the same. The narrative changes, but the symbology, the culture relevant, those have all been the same, and because there's now so many brands doing it, it's very, very difficult for you to stand out in amongst the crowd. And I think John Lewis is still I think if you look at the views, I think John Lewis is still probably one of the top ones there, but I think that's genuinely just because people are now searching for John Lewis.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think that means that the ad is necessarily that impactful, as it would have been back in the day.
So talking about the ads over the last couple of years, what would be up there with top John Lewis ad for you?
I wouldn't. So the one that I would have done the most research on, shall we say, would have been the Bear and Hair campaign, and it wasn't necessarily just the ad, but it was the overall marketing comms that they engaged with for that particular ad. So
360 marketing.
360 marketing. So, like, I mean, at the time they had they were selling the toys in store, little simple things as well. The brand characters were branded on all their bags, which is something that the other retailers didn't do. So literally everywhere you went, there was Bear and Hair. I mentioned a minute ago they had those kind of stage sets or the kind of caricatures in all the John Lewis stores, making it a destination brand, so there was a reason for your digital consumption to translate into online consumption. I think they did something as well. I think they because television ads were still quite prevalent at the time, and they did something which was very clever, is that they bought out a full ad segment in an ad break in X Factor, I think it was, where there was no ads, only the John Lewis one in that segment, so you were hooked then straight away.
Sounds like a short feature film basically being
shown. Exactly. Yeah. They also then made a card maker. It was around the time that e-cards and e-readers were kind of coming to prominence. They released an app with the story of Bear and Hair. So there was not only the story of Bear and Hair, but then if your dad or your mom and your child is interested in this ad, you could then read them the story of Bear and Hair before and after the ad in and of itself. So there was a huge amount of brand extension going on, where the focal point was the ad, but there were so many other consumer touch points built into the overall campaign that it was really, really effective.
I remember seeing about that one, which I actually really enjoyed, and I'm actually not sure if they'd put that kind of level into the other videos since. It's just that one stands out to me in particular. But in terms of it's almost like B-roll secondary videos, they were actually brought out a full video on how they made
it,
which is fantastic. Like, you know, so it's actually showing that this is a big production thing, you know, and as you said, there's all the other elements to it, customer touch points and stuff, which I think is fantastic. So,
and I think what's important here as well is that, and again, I'm quite critical of brands that don't follow through with their messages, and even like in this case, messaging is quite cynical anyway, because ultimately they're trying to sell secondhand, or not secondhand, but they're trying to sell pajamas basically. Do you know what I mean? But the whole premise of that ad, and narratively it was very, very clever. It was around this idea of giving the gift of Christmas, or giving gifts to people who had not experienced Christmas the same way that most of us have, basically. So that was done through the symbology or to the narrative of the hibernating bear, who obviously would never experience Christmas. So then, as a kind of an extension onto that, then they sold the single of the ad, which was a Lily Allen soundtrack.
That's right, and was it Summer Only We Know?
I think that was it. And the tie into that was for every single that was downloaded or bought, possibly at the time. I can't. My years are a bit shaky, but then that money was then donated to children in need.
Yeah.
So again, that is the example of people who don't experience Christmas like the rest of us, and then John Lewis giving back to that again. They also had a competition. I think it was called something like Reworked or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it was basically this idea of buskers could send in the videos of them busking on the street to that song, and then they picked one, and that was basically the one that was played over the ad on Christmas Day.
Oh wow.
So like again this idea of a busker isn't usually going to get that national profile, therefore us John Lewis having that profile is going to give a platform to someone who would never really experience this otherwise. So little small things like that which link the overall campaign together, and then and look, we don't need to talk about today, but I mean, they were one of the first brands to really digitize in terms of their e-commerce, in terms of their click and collect, even little simple things. They realized that having Wi-Fi in the store was really, really important, because when people were going into John Lewis, they were buying quite a lot, and instead of taking things away with you around Manchester or London, whatever, you would go into store, try things on, order it on delivery whilst you were in the store, and then it would just deliver it to you in a couple of days.
I think a lot of retailers are almost giving out about that now, because people are coming in, they're looking at it and seeing where they can get it cheaper.
Exactly,
like,
so they kind of flipped that kind of process, or the thought process the consumer goes through. So like there's a few things there that there's a lot of things there that they did which tied into that campaign, and for me that's what's really effective.
Do you think, like, if we're talking, say, to obviously a smaller business that wouldn't have quite the ad spend, say, that John Lewis would have, but a smaller business and they want to bring out a Christmas video, do you think that they should take elements of what John Lewis did in terms of following through on other touch points? Do you think they should actually look at that kind of stuff?
Well, you have to. I mean, look, if you look at the when you do a campaign, there has to be an objective associated with that campaign. So it can be brand build, as a very, very loose objectives here now, but brand awareness or brand building could be one of them. Awareness and building are two different things, but let's put them in the same for the sake of this conversation. Then you have customer acquisition. You've cross-selling and upselling. Do you know what I mean? So depending on what you are trying to do with the marketing tactic that you are engaging with, that is going to feed into an overall kind of a strategy in terms of how you both build your brand but also generate sales at the same time. So, I mean, if you're going to engage in, again, the kind of emotional touch points of a video, that's fine, but then you need to have sales on the other side of it as well, because for a business to spend, let's say, 3 to 5 grand on a production like that, which is really, really effective, you have to generate sales to make that money back ultimately. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's the key here, is that everything needs to be linked into an overall strategy. It can't be just, we're going to create a nice video for the sake of it being a nice video. There has to be some tangible retail output associated with that. So for example, if you had if you did have an ad, let's say you created an ad and it was tied in with the history of your brand or the making of the product or something along those general lines, if you were running that on Facebook ads, for example, or let's say you were just using it organically, then you should be running alongside that ads which are more sales based, shall we say, linking into your store, so that again you're not just getting people to view the ad, but then there is a consumer action that they can take on your website or in store then afterwards, so that you can actually generate sales from that. I think that's critically important.
So I think for anyone listening that might have spotted our styles over the last couple of weeks, we would have a very kind of different approach to some things, I suppose. So my approach to the John Lewis ads would definitely be different to yours, whereas I would have a different video that would be my favourite. Go on, you're about to say something. I
don't know. I was just where are you going with this? Yeah.
No, my favourite John Lewis ad had to be the Elton John video. Did you see that one?
I know. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So it's basically around the importance. So it's not so much the importance of giving a gift, but how much a particular gift can almost change someone's life. So, you know, he got a piano when he was young, and they're showing videos of him up on stage and singing and playing and stuff like that, and that kind of whole emotional connection. But it's actually something I said it in, and it's probably going to come back a couple of times throughout the rest of the videos we talk about. But I said a thing in episode 1 that if you're putting out content, there has to be 3 things: valuable, shareable, and relevant. Anyone watching the Elton John one would definitely relate it to them, because they could understand the video. They were being shown clips that they understood and that they knew or they've seen before. So it was a bit kind of bringing back a bit of memories for them, where they watched Elton John before, they just like his music. So I just really liked that one, the whole premise, that really emotional side of that video that really kind of caught your attention, and probably didn't do as much in terms of, as you talked about, bearing the hair, in-store stuff and all that. It probably didn't have as much of that kind of stuff involved with it, but I think that style of video, for me personally, was a better one. It
was clever. I think it was kind of cheating though, because you used Elton John. Like there was an element of there's an element of kind of call it like shock, awe, surprise, taken on. Whereas as soon as I saw Elton John, I was like, oh, it's an Avid Elton John. Like it's going to be good. It's going to be really, really good high production. But I was kind of, it was no doubt about that. But I don't think it was as impactful as some of the other ones.
Okay, so we move on now to this year's one. What's your thoughts on this one?
The John Lewis one.
Yeah. We'll start with John Lewis and we'll go into the other ones then.
So there was one thing that I liked about it for a start. They didn't mention COVID. Right. And I thought that was good, because my worry with all these ads, not my worry, I'm not worried about these things, but my thing was that if every single brand fucking COVID. We're all sick of hearing about COVID. So we didn't want to hear about it anymore.
So they got one tick, a good tick for you for that.
So they didn't mention COVID. That was a good start. I thought that the so Joe, it reminded me of, and I don't know was this intentional or not, but I thought it appealed to a number of different generations in terms of the
different
style,
animations and
the
stuff.
different animations. So like when I was looking at it, I thought
pissed me off.
Really?
I didn't like it at all.
No, I thought it was actually quite clever.
And it was a lot of work went into it, and you know there was a good bit of work goes into something like that because not everyone can animate to that level. Kind of, you know, there's a good few people working on that. But no, I didn't like it. I thought it was way too distracting when I was watching.
No, I thought actually if you didn't have that in there, I think the ad was totally absence of any meaning at all.
Oh, well, I'm not even talking about the ad as a whole, but just like, that.
I thought it was very, very clever because I was like at the very, very start you had that kind of I don't want to say it's like the early stages of Pixar, shall we say?
Yeah.
And the old kind of 3D, which is kind of in my generation would have been the kind of Fireman Sam's of this world, and then you moved on then to the more sketches, and that was more kind of animals of Farthing Wood. And I thought as you were going through it, there'd be different generations kind of reminded of their childhood and the different cartoons that they would have watched as a child. And I thought there was that element of nostalgic feel to it. Then in terms of the two things that I didn't like about it, and I saw someone on Twitter commenting this and I absolutely agree with it, music there was no kind of tonality to the music. It didn't mean anything, whereas usually John Lewis right.
John Lewis are very good because, as you said, you already mentioned Lily Allen, they used a track from the band Keane, you know, Somewhere Only We Know, or whatever the name of the song is.
Yeah.
But they always use something that's kind of known. Was it last year they used Bastille?
Yeah.
They used Bastille singing I can't remember the song, but it's a very well known old song, like, you know, but they're reviving or they're using either a well known artist or a well known song, you know. So I think I definitely think they kind of the song was very good. It definitely suited it, but I think they missed the mark with something, that little touch on the music. Yeah, you're definitely
like
right.
you mean the narrative, like, so the music should add weight to what is going on in the scene in and of itself. That's the point. If you look at any film or anything like that, there's a classic. If you have a war scene in a movie, for example, and it should be kind of rocky, kind of action-based music, but if it's kind of classical music, then there's almost a philosophical point being made about the art of war and how it's actually a tragedy, as opposed to engaging when you're building an ad, it's called rhythmic synchronization, where you basically beat to something that's going on in the ad. And again, with relation to this John Lewis ad, there was no linkage between. I couldn't even tell you now what the music was.
No,
there was no linkage between the story and the music in the background.
Whereas, like, you take Bear in the Hair, Lily Allen's voice is just purely brings back memories of that ad. Like,
100%.
So that'll definitely be lost.
And then beyond that, then I didn't know what the ad was about. Just out of pure fundamental, like picking it apart, but then overall, just to obliterate it.
Well, in terms of that, they got a tick from me because I think they were watching our Gift Local campaign for the last few weeks.
They were me bollocks. I've got no text messages from Mr. Marketing John Lewis going, "Can you help us out, please?"
Yeah, basically the whole ad was around giving something that's of need to a person in need at that time. Basically, it was basically what I was going with.
What does that have to do with a guy getting his football caught up in his tree? I didn't get that from the ad. I thought it was a very...
She got the umbrella and got the ball down.
No.
Anyway,
reminiscent of a mugging.
I do think it was overall. It was an okay ad. It wasn't great. It was a bit of a disappointment this year. When everyone, as we already talked about, everyone was really looking forward. There was a lot of pressure on John Lewis this year to produce. But I think it was a bit of a letdown.
That was weak. No, to be fair to John Lewis, there was that thing where they had to reshoot it
or something. They were saying, so like that's like John Lewis. You can probably guarantee they're probably on a week off this week, the team, but next week they're working on next year's ad. They're probably 100%. At that level, like, you know. So to turn around an ad probably in a couple of months was a lot of pressure for them.
I know 100%. I just didn't think in the end, in terms of impact, shareability.
One thing I noticed in this one, I'm not quite sure if they brought it in the other ones, but they had a lot more of a focus this year on the Waitrose brand. They threw that in a little bit more this year. I don't know if they had that in the other ones as much. And
they've always had it at the end, but it wouldn't have been as prominent.
Like the shopping bag was a Waitrose bag and all this kind of stuff.
True.
So that's kind of featuring a little bit more there. So moving on, what ad did you like to say this year?
The best ad by far, and again, I suppose there's kind of a trick here in so much as that you're looking at an ad from a marketing perspective and you're looking at what were they thinking when they put together that ad in terms of what emotional touch points. Were they trying to hit what target audience they were going after, what actions they want the consumer to take afterwards?
Come on, everyone's wanting to know what's the video.
No, the best one by a categoric mile. The best one was Disney by a absolute distance in terms of the cleverness of it all. So like, I mean, the Disney one, for people who haven't, see, there's a problem that we probably should have. Before you listen to the episode, you should watch the SuperValu ad, the Woodies ad, the John Lewis ad, and the Disney ad, and the Coca-Cola ad. Otherwise, none of this makes any sense. Basically.
Or if you're a company that are not listed in the above, we don't mention you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but the kind of premise. So again, it was based around this idea of kind of generations and how the relationships between generations shift as people get older and so on and so forth. So the whole premise was this idea of, at the start, there was a young girl gets a Mickey Mouse toy, and then as the ad progresses, this person is basically the grandmother, and she is looking after what I presume is either her child or her grandchild. I think it's grandchild by just looking at the way they did the artwork and so on and so forth. And the ad basically spans from 1940 right up to, I think it's 2005. And again, it shows the generational shift between the and the relationships between the two. So the whole idea of the ad, I suppose, towards the end is that the grandmother gifts the daughter the Mickey Mouse toy that she had as a child growing up. It was obviously very, very important to her. And obviously the Mickey Mouse toy kind of came out every year, and they use it as a Christmas decoration. Again, nostalgia, that connection that they had, or whatever the case may be. And then it showed towards the end of the ad where instead of the grandchild staying and helping the grandmother put up the Christmas decoration, she was going off with her friends, whatever the story was, and there was that kind of sense of loneliness for the grandmother. And I think there's a touch of everyone kind of has that relationship as they get older, where there's that kind of detached from the kind of family home, shall we say. I think that's something that everything will relate to, and I think symbolically they communicated that quite well. But then at the very end of the ad, and again, there was no tricks or gimmicks or kind of twists in the narrative. It was just the kind of realization of the grandchild coming home as probably a 20-something after her night out, and then doing up the room and the Christmas decorations, and then gifting back the grandmother the Mickey Mouse toy.
Yeah, there was a tear in it, and she fixed it.
There was a tear in it, so it was kind of like, there was kind of that sense of, yeah, I'm growing up, but it doesn't mean that I don't care about you. It doesn't mean I don't remember these things, which is probably the sense that people get when they're getting detached from other family members. So again, I thought, in terms of narrative, in terms of the symbols that they embedded in the ad, I thought they got it absolutely spot on.
I do think it was a very good ad. It's definitely not up there with my favourite, but it is for the favourite of this year, but it is up there. But I think there was a couple of little things I really liked in it. I think subtly, you didn't even mention it there, I think subtly they might have been referring to, maybe not, but just one of the things I took from it, and that's the thing with ads, like everyone will take something a little bit different. I felt that, you're talking about the whole COVID thing and people being cocooning at home and stuff like that. The mother was at home, she brought Christmas to the house.
Interesting.
I kind of got that aspect of it. One thing I really, really liked in the middle is when the daughter or granddaughter came home, she picked up the toy. There was pure silence in the ad, and that's a very brave thing for anyone to do. There was no music, there was no voiceover, there was no shuffle of papers in the corner, there was nothing. It was literally silence while she looked at, and that's when you're making ads, to drop it like that and try and build it back up to a big finish is a very brave thing to do.
Yeah, like, I mean, you almost had, with the drawing and again the graphic design and whatever, the animation, like, you have to animate the emotion because there's no music to give you music to give you that sense of what's going on in this particular.
So straight away that silence is going to, it's like even making a speech or public speaking. The minute you pause, people are tense and waiting for what's next, so they automatically catch your attention in that bit. So if you're even dazed out or you're watching a group and there's a pause, it will bring people right back in. I was a bit worried when you said there about, when she goes away and kind of goes with, they have your typical ad sad moment. I was wondering, was the granny going to make it through?
Oh Jesus! Oh God! They couldn't do that for Christmas. Gee, can you imagine they did and they cut it there?
No, I think a couple of people have said that to me. Just thought the granny was going to die.
Fucking hell.
But
okay, my mind didn't go to that bleak place. Now, in fairness, Jesus Christ, fucking
no, I just
hell.
thought they kind of got that bit, a little bit
that'd
wrong.
That'd be a mic drop for Disney, wouldn't it?
It would.
Happy Christmas, baby Jesus.
So, in terms of the overall ad, I thought it was good. But if I had the credit card for Disney, the way I would have done it probably was that video along with maybe 2 or 3 other similar videos, and release it as part of almost like a series of videos for the year. I thought it was very weak on its own for Disney. I think like if you brought out around a series of videos around kind of making memories last, that kind of Disney feel to it, I think that would have been better.
No, I disagree. I think the more you add to it, the more you dilute the 2 characters, the grandmother and the...
But not about those, like another scenario, 2 other videos.
But once you do it once, it's kind of given away, right? Unless it's a different scenario
entirely.
But
that whole thing of around make memories last, like, you know, especially this time of the year, like, you know, that we've had a shit year. We need to make memories last this Christmas because we need it. And I think they kind of just I just don't think it was as strong as it could have been.
I don't actually think it was about making, if you're going to be very specific about it, I don't think it was about making memories last.
No, I'm saying that's what I think that's what I would have done if I changed it slightly.
Okay, yeah, okay, interesting. No, I thought and again, to go back in terms of even if you look at the ad and you deconstruct the ad, just the little subtleties that they put in. So even on the mantelpiece, there was the different photographs of the grandmother and the granddaughter kind of growing up, and you could see the transition. Yeah. I think what it reminded me of as well, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, because it was kind of the roles reversed in kind of way. But did you ever? I'm sure you have, the end of Toy Story 3 when Andy gives away his toys.
Mm-hmm.
If there's two films out there that are going to make a bloke cry, it's going to be the end of Toy Story 3 and the end of what's the one about the dog?
The dog?
Yeah, the dog dies at the end of it.
I don't know what you're on.
Oh, what's the name of it?
Should have done the research before you go on.
I should have done the research.
You have a little lassie or something like that.
No, not fucking lassie.
Oh, you have the one with Will Smith. No, that's another film. Dog dies in that one too.
Oh, that's the Pursuit of Happiness you're talking about, is it?
No, anyway, it doesn't really matter. No, it's not. It's the one with the
I should check. I'm going to check. I'm going to actually...
You'll have it for a minute. Let me talk away.
Highly unprofessional of me, but I'm going to... Because this is shocking. Marley and Me. The end of Marley and Me. How did I forget that? Jesus Christ.
You only watched it last week.
And I was crying. I was at home, tears in lockdown, going, I don't have any pubs and I don't have a dog.
Right, we'll move on from Marley and Me. Another Christmas ad then, so we kind of
actually before we actually do that as well, one more point I make about this ad, because it's a point that
it better be good now if you're stopping.
No, it is actually a good point, because what a lot of these ads tend to do, right, is they use the symbol of loneliness quite often. Mm-hmm. There's usually someone elderly, and what they often do, which is quite cynical, and it's something that I don't think they should do. And there was an ex-colleague of mine, he's currently in the University of Nottingham, Dr. Paddy Lonergan, and he wrote an article. Absolutely, always for the academics. And he basically made the point that, do you remember John Lewis's Half the World Away ad where there was the guy up in the moon?
Oh, the man in the moon.
Yeah.
Man in the moon. Well, they got in trouble for that or something. Or well, they got a lot of backlash.
Got a little bit of backlash, but the thing that they did is that they were commodifying loneliness. And by that I mean is that they think that loneliness can be solved by gifting people fucking pajamas, like, do you know what I mean? Which obviously isn't the case. It's about kind of relationships and being with people. So as they were commodifying and using this idea of loneliness, and loneliness is obviously an incredible societal problem, particularly around Christmas time. The one thing that this ad did is that it didn't actually commodify loneliness in so much as that it was about the people being together and the memories, because she was gifting her like the toy that was there ages ago. It wasn't like buy something else and bring over presents and all the rest of it. So I thought they did that better than any other ad that I've seen in a good number of years.
It's actually funny you say that. So in the previous role that I worked in, to the one that I'm in now, with a local food producer, Flynn's Gourmet Sash Company, we done 3 Christmas ads each year. You know, I was definitely going down that style of storytelling, or John Lewis or whatever it was. So we done the 3, but after kind of the first and the second one, we got to the stage where people were like, you know, what's this year's video, you know? But a lot of people said, I just think you're going to do it around an old guy at home or an old granny at home or something, and they straight away went to that whole area of, as you said, loneliness, like, you know. And I was like, I didn't even think about anything like that, but it was almost like that automatic thought that surely you're going to have to do one about someone.
Yeah, like it's the low hanging fruit, and again, if you're going to talk about loneliness and do it in a really, really kind of a kind of a dignified way. Whereas again, that idea of the Man in the Moon ad was that this this man is alone by himself, and now because he gets a present, he's
Life is
all
better.
happy again. Do you know what I mean? And again, and even if there's people involved, that kind of, there's always that intrinsic element or that extrinsic element
Well,
that's associated with it.
there's another video we looked up there this year, another one that's just been released on loneliness, as you're saying, and that was Woodies Ireland. The Harbour store released their one. Did you see that one?
Oh, the Christmas one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one's very much around, I think it's Mrs. Higgins or something like that, is living on the street up in Dublin, and she's going out in all kinds of weather, cleaning the streets, all this kind of stuff. She's a kind of a middle-aged neighbour living beside her, and at one stage she's going down to the shops, and all the young scuts down the road are, hello Mrs. Higgins, but every time she leaves the house she has battles with her front gate that is basically not closing properly and scraping and banging and making noise. So she comes back, obviously. You know straight away, the minute she has a trouble with that gate, the first time the story is done.
Something's going to happen with the gate.
You
the
know
gate's
it's going to be done,
get fixed. Like,
Woodies are going to send in big electric revolving gates or something. No. So basically she comes back from the shop, and it's funny actually, she comes back from the shop and they show a split second of the neighbour, the middle-aged guy next door, smiling out at her kind of as she's coming in. She fixes the gate, and straight away you automatically think, right, he's been, a very good citizen, a good neighbour, and he's fixed the gate. Whereas it's not. It's one of the young scuts down the road is after fixing the gate and says Merry
and again,
Christmas.
It's kind of, it's one of those that the narratively, it's fine. It's a bit, for me, it's a bit cheap. Take the stereotype of the fella with the fucking North Place jacket and the Adidas hat, and of course he's not going to turn out to be the monster that you thought he was at the start. Like, do you know what I mean? So again, I don't like. Taking stereotypes and flipping them is one of the oldest advertising tricks going, and it's kind of cheap. You kind of know what's happening.
What didn't do it for me was, I love a bit of a twist, and the fact that it was so predictable at the start, I was like, I may as well just turn off now. We know what's going to happen.
Well, it was kind of, again, they tried to twist it by flipping or subverting the narrative of your man, but like, again, it was kind of cheap, and probably the fact that people were looking at it going, oh, here we go, of course, again, he fixed the gate kind of thing. Like, do you know what I mean? I didn't think, again, I thought it was cheap. I thought it was an easy story to tell. I didn't think there was no twist, like you said. Again, I don't like when people just use stereotypes of any description in ads. And then flip the stereotype just very abruptly to tell a particular story, and that everyone isn't a monster. Like, of course they're fucking not. Like, your man was hanging out with his mates and he was wearing a jacket. Like, can you imagine he wasn't wearing a jacket? His mother would have been furious with him. So like,
straight into John Lewis
for a woolly jacket and a fucking telescope.
So I think that one's kind of on our list, kind of middle of the road there. It's not the worst, it's not the best, but I think there is definitely, we're going to go to the worst now on the list for me. And I thought, I would have preferred no advert to seeing this one, and that was Coca-Cola.
It wasn't even an ad. It was a fucking shambles.
If anyone hasn't watched this, I wouldn't bother. I'd
watch it. It's a good lesson in, like, it's one thing. It's my favourite lecture that I do with students every year, is that, because most of the lecturing that we do is all about good advertising. Like, every now and then you need to, not every now and then, the majority of what you should be teaching people is what a bad advert is, first of all. Do you know what I mean? And there's some... My favourite one was a number of years ago. It was a billboard that was up in the middle of the city here, and it was from Nescafe, and the tagline, there was a mother and a son hugging each other, and the tagline was, you can't email a hug. And the first thing that came into my mind was, well, you can't fucking email a coffee either. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I just didn't get what the point of the ad was.
Well, for anyone who hasn't watched the Coca-Cola ad, basically the whole...
there's a whale in it.
There's a whale in it, yes. Moby Dick is in the middle of it. No, basically there's a guy going out to work, set in America, a guy going out to work, and he gets handed a letter on the way, obviously a Santi letter from his daughter, and basically goes off out to work. He's out working on, like...
I sure it was a letter.
It was
sure it wasn't a postal vote for Big Joe. Big Joe!
Don't start.
I won't do it again.
But yes, I guess you're right. Fucking things up. He gets the letter. He's out working on like a wind farm or something off out in the ocean, and basically he's having the lunch and spots the letter in the toolbox and decides he has to get the letter to Santa, otherwise he's going to be the worst father in the world. He goes off. He gets thrown overboard by gets the boat gets broken down. He gets thrown overboard by, as you said, a whale. He's being washed up. He's going through forests. He's going through deserts. He's going through blizzards. He's going literally all four corners of the earth. He eventually arrives at the smallest Santa cabin I've ever seen in the middle of the North Pole. Not realistic at all.
No elves, no.
There's no elves or nothing. Closed for Christmas. Next thing, what turns up behind him but the big Coca-Cola truck. He gets dropped home, gives the letter. Santa's driving the truck, and the letter says, basically all I wanted for Christmas was my dad to come home. It was, if you wrote it down on paper, it had the bones of an ad, but I think what I got from when I watched it was, even I'm stuttering over my words, it was terrible. If you watch it, it's basically, look how much of a marketing spend we have, and look at what we can do with it. We'll get
spend as much money as possible.
We'll get a whale, we'll film in the desert, we'll film in the rainforest, we'll film up in the North Pole, we'll climb mountains, we'll go abseiling, we'll do whatever we can do to waste this money in the budget. Because obviously they couldn't do a whole lot else for the rest of the year.
See, that was the thing. See, the part of the ad where I liked it in so much as that I thought it was funny, but I think I only find it funny as a marketing person because how bad it was. Yeah, I was like, oh, mother of God, there's a whale in the fucking ad. And now Santa's after showing up in a fucking Coca-Cola truck. Like, how come commodifying loneliness? Like, Dad's home and he's brought a crate of Coca-Cola with him. Like, happy Christmas.
I think what you're talking about with Bear and the Herons...
Was it a Coca-Cola truck or was it a Coke Zero truck this year?
Oh, no.
It's still a Coca-Cola.
They paid the full VAT this year.
They paid the full VAT. No sugar tax. No expense spared.
They tried to spin off a couple of side stories like the whole Bear and the Hare thing and build up a bit of a story. I think on the side I saw one. To be honest, I didn't look too much into it, but apparently the dad in the video is actually like a war veteran or something like that. So they were trying to say that this is coming home for Christmas and all this kind of stuff.
Okay, you see that makes sense, and that's what the ad should be about.
Then why didn't they put him in the army?
Because if you have something like that, given the war veteran stuff, and you don't even need to create the narrative, but if you don't know that he's a war veteran and it has nothing to do with war.
Oh no, in real life he's actually a war veteran.
No, that's my point. Yeah. So therefore that adds a huge amount of meaning to that ad. Now that you just said that to me, whereas I didn't know that at all. I just clicked it.
But it means nothing, as you said, when you watch the ad, it doesn't show.
Yeah, because they've done a few, because Guinness a number of years ago did something like that where there was a thing about a soldier coming home. And again, for an American audience, those are always very, but like if you look at, I think some of the top viewed videos on YouTube are the soldiers coming home videos.
Home, surprising in school.
And their dog meets them for the first time in 6 months, whatever, a couple of years. So, no, those are... Like, that makes it even worse. Cause
that they didn't use that story.
It makes it worse in that they didn't use this story, but it's even worse again that they're kind of trivialising the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, I know how I feel about that now. You just kind of sprung them on me. But either way, it's a shite ad. Terrible.
What else do we have this year? We had...
branding company in the world, me bollocks.
We had Aldi and Lidl as well. Did you see those?
I saw was it the little room where they were kind of taking the mick out of other Christmas ads basically, and that they had insert sad song here kind of
they kind of had a spin-off ad, but the actual ad I thought was quite poor. It was basically the shop gets closed at night time, the elves run a riot in the shop making Christmas dinner and all this kind of stuff, and someone comes back in. It's basically like a version of Toy Story, she's coming, hide, that kind of a thing. It was okay. It wasn't great.
The R-rated Toy Story. Fuck, she's here.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Fucking guy hiding in the cupboard.
And then the competitors that then, or the brother I should say, in Aldi, their video is continuing on from the last couple of years, and this whole idea of Kevin the carrot. Whereas Kevin, so the whole idea behind this one is Kevin is in a jet, crashes, # where's Kevin. That's basically they're spinning off where's Kevin at the moment all on social media. Poor Kevin. They're spinning that off online at the moment, but in the ad there's like a cute hedgehog. It's snowing, they're in the middle of a forest. Santa shows up, of course they land near Santa's house. Santa, I can't see it when I look at him, but apparently it's Colin Meaney is playing Santa in the Aldi ad.
Bit of a waste of money there.
Bit of a waste of money when I can't recognise him. I don't even think to me it's a different voiceover in the whole lot. I don't know if it's true. I've seen a couple of things online that it's him, but I think it's not making me, oh geez, that's Colin Meaney, adding a bit more weight to the video. So that was an okay ad. It wasn't great. It's grand. It's kind of a cute video, but my favourite of the whole lot is definitely SuperValu. To me, it wins hand down. I know you're shaking your head now, like.
No, it was in terms of like put it this way. In terms, like we were talking about earlier on about expectations and how John Lewis has disappointed people, I wasn't expecting that out of SuperValu. I thought it was actually very, very clever.
And they were kind of the first one to the market as well.
They were, yeah. And I think, to be fair to them, right, they used COVID, but they needed to use COVID because it built up the rest of the story, basically. Because if you had, like, it was like you said earlier on in terms of the Disney side of things, and you took out of it that there was an element of COVID here in terms of elderly people being lonely and so on and so forth. So what I thought was kind of interesting here, shall we say, is that they mentioned it came up on the radio, COVID-19 sweeps the nation, blah, 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 blah. And at the very end, even though there's a twist in terms of the child, we think he's talking about Santa Claus and he's actually talking about his granddad, because of the year that we've had, the fact that they mentioned COVID at the start adds more weight to granddad coming in. Whereas, I mean, otherwise, I think without that little bit of this, without that little subtle hint to COVID, you mightn't make that immediate connection, I don't think. Whereas I think it was very cleverly done, I thought.
But I think in terms of that, what we talked about already, in terms of that twist and that, you know, not being predictable, now that you think about it, you're like, I knew, I should have known that was coming, you know, given the ad. But I think because I was watching it and I expected it to be Santa shows up and they have a great Christmas, because that's what SuperValu would usually do. The Kellogg kind of ad, usual, the kid comes down the stairs.
Like,
No, I think that's what made it better. I think the fact that no one expected that twist, and it very much is one of those videos you watch and go, "Aw." Do you know, that kind of ad? So I think they're win. For me personally, they're winning it. You're still strongly with Disney.
I mean, no, but to be fair, like, I'm comparing Disney with SuperValu. Like, do you know what I mean?
What's wrong with it? For all our friends in SuperValu.
Yeah, but let's call space. Disney, one of the big in the history of the world, the top movie storyteller, and then you've got SuperValu. And to be fair to SuperValu, and the Musgrave Group in general, they do really good campaigns. Yeah. And again, most of it is around kind of selling the product. And again, they're in-store displays and stuff like that. Really, really good, that side of things. And I think this was the first year that I really thought that, okay, this is something that could actually appeal emotionally to people. And I thought, no, in fairness to them, I thought out of all the ads that I've seen from heavy hitters like, again, your TK Maxx, your Lidl, your Aldi's, we mentioned John Lewis, Coca-Cola, like all of these massive multinational organisations, and when you see Musgraves, who are a massive organisation in the context of Ireland, but globally obviously not so much, I think their ads would compete with the best of them, to be honest with you. It really, really would. And I think it was a bit more, and again, I think in terms of it being an actual ad, I actually think the SuperValu one was probably more effective than the Disney one. I just think the Disney one is better because I think it's more clever. It's a bit more subtle and it's a bit more nuanced. And again, that's probably me liking it more as a marketer. Whereas I would have, put it this way, if you would have shown me both ads, I would have got a bit of a smile out of the SuperValu one, whereas the Disney one I've been more impressed, shall we say, in terms of, okay, this is clever, I get what they're doing here. So again, that's just the narrative view that you look at something at, as someone who would study ads as a profession.
Very good. Anything else to say on the whole topic of Christmas and ads, and even though we're a few weeks out?
What I thought was like,
do you think from now on, is it too late to bring an ad in?
No, I think, like in many ways, this year more than any year, the later the better in many ways, because like, I don't know, it's going to be very interesting what people's mindset is. Like, again, I think people are going to go for convenience. I think, do you know the way, like, and I'd even do this myself to a certain extent, where you set aside a day and you go into town or shop or whatever, and you do your big shop for everyone and all the rest of it. And it's an occasion, it's an event. I'm not sure you're going to get that this year. I think it could be more of a chore for people, because you're queuing in the rain, you're queuing in
a lot more online shopping this
year. If you're with your kids, if you want to get a coffee somewhere, very difficult to do it because the capacities are at 30% everywhere. Can't go grab a bite to eat unless everything's regimented and you've everything booked. So I think it's going to be more mission orientated for people this year. And I think, but at the same time, I think there's going to be a lot more people putting effort into Christmas at home. So I think there's probably something there for the market to use the word exploit. That's essentially what the market does. In terms of people investing more in home, like even myself, for example, whilst always complying with health and safety guidelines, I was looking at getting a heater and a gazebo for outside. I've got a balcony out the back of where I live, basically. But like, I mean, if my mates come over because we can't go to the pub because we're in lockdown, never, and again 2 or 3 HSE guidelines all compliant, NEFIT,
we'll announce the house party here.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. Everyone needs Project X, but again, that idea of investing in a heater or a decent, just so again, if you want to have a few mates over, you can. Do you know what I mean? As a pun.
It's where you're marketing.
That's it. Yeah. So so I think there's going to be a lot of people investing in Christmas in the home this year, I think, which is something that, again, the likes of your Woodies and stuff like that, I think will absolutely capitalise on. But again, in terms of that shop, I think a lot more of it's going to be online. It's going to be a lot more about convenience, quick, mission-orientated shopping. And it's going to be really interesting to see how consumer spending patterns change this year depending on other years. Because, again, cities aren't nice places at the moment, unfortunately, despite businesses doing Trojan work to make them as, like, even I mentioned heaters at my back garden, the amount of businesses investing in your outdoor seating and all that kind of stuff, and they're going to turn it on over the next couple of weeks, but it's going to be very, very difficult. Like we spoke last week about this idea of kind of transforming spaces and stuff like that. If you're talking about Ireland and the UK, really, really difficult to transform an outdoor space in December. Like,
pick it up and move it.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah. So I think more so than ever, I think catching the consumer when they're at the point where they want to make a purchase or when it's convenient for them to make a purchase, I think should be the mission of marketers this year. I think if you can present, before there was people shopping around and would they like that, and there's going to be a lot more, that'll do, and I'll take it now, because then I don't have to queue down in Brown Thomas for 2 hours or whatever the story is. So I think that to me is going to be the real strategy this year in terms of getting your product in front of consumers.
Good, right. Good chat around ads. Given our top, so top for you is Disney, top for me is SuperValu. We highly we're at the end and you're Disney, changing it now.
I'm not changing it. No, it is. No, like, I mean, again, narratively and in terms of the thought that went into it.
So SuperValu is your favourite ad,
Disney,
right? That's grand.
But the simplicity of the SuperValu ad and it being very kind of clinical in terms of the messaging was equally as good. And again, you're talking about Disney and Musgraves here, like, do you know what I mean?
There was 50 minutes down the drain. You switched your opinion.
I didn't switch. It's a nuanced opinion. This is not a black and white. You can't bully me into making a decision. This isn't the fucking election.
We'll leave it there anyway. And thanks very much for listening to another week. We'll be back again next week. We highly recommend you go and watch any of the videos that we've after mentioning, and let us know what you think. So you can follow us across social media, subscribe, keep up to date, and thanks very much, everyone.
Yeah, that's it for us this week. See you later.